Okay, we are going to LinkedIn for a couple of questions that came in. So, two people asked this question in slightly different ways, and I figured I'll answer them both at the same time. So, one person had asked any advice for new coders, and then the other person had asked what traits make a great entry level intern slash engineer, and how can I make a good impression? So, I'm going to try to answer them both together. Because they're probably similar, and I feel like you could go more specific on either one, but the reality is like hopefully I can give some general advice that will be helpful. So if you have questions that you want answered, leave them in the comments below. Happy to try and answer. And of course, you can do as these people did. Look for Dev Leader on social media or Nick Cosentino on LinkedIn. Send me your message. I will keep it anonymous. Like in this case, I didn't say their names. If you send the messages, they're anonymous and you can add more detail. So, more detail helps me. These ones are kind of general, which is totally fine. It's because they were part of larger conversations, but they're kind of just tacking on these extra questions, which is, again, happy to answer general ones too. So, where to start with this? I'll give you a little bit of background so that if you're new on my channel and you're like, well, who's this bald guy talking to me? Um, I have been an engineering manager for about 12 and a half years now. Prior to Microsoft, where I'm at right now, I worked at a startup and I actually had interns for almost the full 8 years that I was there, like around the calendar. So it wasn't just like summer interns, but we'd have just interns all the time, which is great. So there's that. I was an intern myself. I had 6 internships in university. So like 24 months of being an intern. So this person's asking about entry level intern or like being just a sort of junior engineer, and then the other person's like advice for new coders. So I have like I was there, I was an intern, and then on top of that, like having to navigate onboarding people that are very junior is something I've spent a large part of my career doing. So even though now, like at Microsoft, I'm a principal level engineering manager, I have teams of people. I have principal engineers on my team. I have senior engineers and other people on the team that can help do the onboarding now. Something that I've always kind of kept close to me is being able to try and help new people. It's literally the reason that I'm doing this right now. I want to be able to try and give back how I can. At Microsoft, they have something called early in career mentorship circles that I've signed up for doing year over year. I was about to stop because I saw that there was another opportunity for management. How does it work? Aspiring managers. So I thought that I would be kind of put into the same program, but for aspiring managers. But it was actually like a very short program. So now that I realize that, I'm gonna go back to doing both. I'll do aspiring managers for a short period when it runs, and then early in career mentorship. But I do this kind of stuff because I have experience with it. I enjoy doing it. I like being able to help out people that are starting out and they're like feeling kind of lost. And I like doing that because I've been there and I have seen other people going through it. And for me, I would say the thing that sticks out is like when I watch other people go through and they're struggling. There's some things that I feel like, man, I wish if I could explain this better or like make it more clear for this person. Like I could I could help them through a lot of what they're struggling about, right? So for example, I've talked about this in many videos, but people like getting blocked because they don't want to ask questions. Like, okay, I observe this a lot. How do I make sure that I can teach people when they're onboarding? Like, you're new because you have, you're fresh out of school, out of boot camp, self-taught, whatever it is, but you haven't worked before, and that's totally fine. How do I make it clear to you that you need to be asking questions? Like, we want to be answering your questions. We want to help you. So like just quick example of like I like doing this kind of stuff because I want to be able to help people kind of make that breakthrough for themselves, because if I can help them get through those little roadblocks sooner, they're not little for them. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm like, hey, this is something that we should try to address early, get you, rocking and rolling sooner. And to me, that something that I just really enjoy. So that's the preamble. I'm really good at rambling. So now, how do we address good things for juniors to start doing? So let's start talking about coding because that was one of the other questions. If you're new to coding in general, um, I would say my number one piece of advice, and it probably sounds like a broken record now, but like you have to be coding. And what I mean by that is not, okay, cool, let me go watch a tutorial, pause the video, copy the code, or go through the article, copy and paste everything over so that at the end of the video or at the end of the article, you can press play and it just works. And the same thing, not that I'm against AI, but the same thing if you're like, hey, ChatGPT or hey, Copilot, go make this thing, you copy and paste the code and you say, hey, it runs. Look, I'm learning. Look, I've built it. That's not what I'm saying to do. Not that that's wrong to do in general, but that's not how I think you should be spending your time. So if you're a new programmer, I would say I would want you to be spending more time trying to build things, getting stuck trying to build things. Those things can be almost anything. You can and should start small. Build simple console applications. Download a template for, I don't know if you're building in like ASP.NET, like a sample web application, or you can find any kind of starting point and then just try to build stuff. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Don't try to get users, just try to build something. And if you're like, I have no idea what to build, go ask ChatGPT for ideas. So, like, it's a great tool just to be like, hi, like, I'm a new programmer. I literally recommend you try this. If you're like, Nick, I get stuck and I don't know what to do, just do this, right? I'm a new programmer. What language do you want to learn? I want to learn JavaScript. I would like to try building a web application. And I want to be able to make sure I can practice full stack and then throw in some interests. Like I like hockey, I like Pokemon, and I'm a big movie buff. Give me 10 different ideas of things I could build, right? And then you get some ideas and you're like, okay, I have no idea what the heck I'm doing here. How am I going to build any of these? But then just like basically pick an idea that it gives you and then say, okay, cool. Like, how do I like break it down into smaller pieces? Because this is the key. Break it down into smaller pieces. You could ask for help doing that. But once you find something where like, I think I understand, like, this part is just like, I need a very simple web service. And if you don't know how to do that, like, again, you can go find an example for how to get started on it. There's nothing wrong with that. But my point is that you don't want something to guide you through step by step the whole way where you can just copy paste. You need to try building things and getting stuck. And it sounds like, I know for some people hearing this, we're like, that sounds dumb because I can just get the answer. And I know you can get the answer way faster than I used to be able to get because you can just ask AI for it now. Whereas we had to go use Stack Overflow, make sure we knew the keywords, right? Here's the error I'm getting. Someone hopefully has seen this. Um, so I get it. Yes, you can get the answer, but the the goal of like the learning process is not just to get the answer the fastest way, which would be asking a person, asking Stack Overflow, asking AI. That's not the goal. The goal is that you're like getting stuck and understanding so that you can make that breakthrough. It's okay if you get stuck on something and you're like, I have to go watch a YouTube video on this part. Now I can see how to apply it. Now I will go apply it. There's nothing wrong with that. But if every step that you do, you don't try anything and you just get an answer that you can copy and paste, I think that's going to, I don't want to say there's no learning involved in that, but I think that you're going to find that it feels hard to go build things. Now, my perspective, I've talked about this in other videos too related to AI. My perspective on that might change over time. If people just get so good at prompting and AI becomes sufficiently good where you can just keep doing that and keep building things, I'll be happy to eat my words. Like, I am trying to keep a very open mind about this, but at least what I'm seeing right now, I would highly recommend you get stuck trying to build stuff. So that means don't just go, hey, I'm going to go learn today. Let me find a tutorial and copy the code step by step. I just don't think that that's going to reinforce a lot of the patterns that you're trying to get. And those take time and experience. So put in the time and get the experience. That's my number one piece of advice for new coders. I recently made a video on the difference between coding in school versus coding on the job. That's on Code Commute. It's also going to be the topic of a live stream. I guess depending when you're watching this, this should hopefully go out on Monday, February 3rd. And that's going to be the topic of my live stream on DevLeader, which is my main YouTube channel. And it's also the newsletter article I wrote for DevLeader Weekly. So if you check out my newsletter, weekly.devleader.ca, you should be able to see it. If you're watching this in the future, at some point that newsletter will be paywalled. But you can, I think I keep it roughly 1 month of articles are totally free. So you don't even have to subscribe. You can just go to weekly.devleader.ca and read them as they come out. But those are usually my live stream topics on my main channel. But I thought that one would be a good one. If you don't want any of that, just go watch the other video that's on Code Commute that talks about this. It was put out recently. So the main idea there is that like how you are learning things in school is going to try and teach you concepts for how code is structured versus on the job is going to look different. So I would say if you want to get a bit of a head start for like coding advice for work, I would say get used to navigating other code bases, get used to changing existing code. So you built something and you're like, cool, I followed the tutorial and it's done. I would say don't stop there. Now you have a code base, go change it. All right, go change whatever you did, go change it so you can add new features, go change it so you can use a different database, like just start making modifications to it because you're going to be doing a ton of that. A ton of it when you're building stuff in the real world. In fact, you'll likely spend most of your career working on existing systems versus building them from scratch. So go figure out how to performance test it, write benchmarks for it, refine it. Go figure out how to write unit tests or functional tests on it. Go figure out how to deploy it. Go add features, like I said, right? Like all these types of things you can go do. And I recommend that you do that because you'll be practicing like real things that you'll be doing versus just let me go to the next tutorial and copy it step by step. Someone's already done the work for you that way. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So I think that's probably my advice on if you're a new coder. So maybe let's kind of switch gears over to the other part of this question. It's from two people, right? So um, what traits make a great entry level intern or engineer? I would say being curious and wanting to learn goes a tremendous way because one of the things that is kind of challenging is like when we take on interns, um, or if you're like a new hire, right? So say you're not an intern, but you're just junior developer that's been hired. When when I as an engineering manager, when I'm trying to like put work in front of people to say, hey, like here's a task we need you to work on. Um, the reality is that over time, I need people to be learning about the domain that we're working in. So, for example, at Microsoft, at this current time, I work on the routing plane for Office 365 and what we call Substrate. So, if we're working in this area, if like people aren't curious and they're very narrowly focused on whatever we put in front of them, it's probably going to be like kind of tricky for them to be able to grow into other areas of the team. And I get it right away. That might not be expected. It might be overwhelming, but I generally find that very curious interns or very curious new hires, it goes a long way. So they ask a lot of questions, and it's not. I want to kind of frame this up. They ask a lot of questions to understand things, right? So you can ask for help. I'll talk about that in just a moment, but they ask questions because they're curious. So I think it's great when I get messages and people, or like I can see it in the team chat and it's like, hey, how does this work? Like I'm curious. I know that we do X, but like, have we talked about doing Y, or like, why don't we do Z? And like just talking, like asking questions to be curious, I think it goes a really long way. Um, and I realize for some people, like that could be, you could be a little bit nervous about doing it. You might not feel comfortable, but like if this person was saying, well, like what traits are good, I would say being curious is huge one. I think it's great. Kind of layered into that though is like this idea where you like want to be learning. So people that are eager to learn or eager for challenges, I think that that's also a great trait. You have to balance it with like not taking on too much stuff. Like Oh, sure, yeah, yeah, like I can take one more thing. I can take one more thing. Generally don't want to fall into that trap, but the idea of like, you got something done and you're like, hey, like I would want to try the next challenging thing. Like I thought that went well, or that was challenging, but I enjoyed it. Like, is there something like this or another advancement in the challenge? Like I think that's great. It's the kind of thing, like, again, as an engineering manager, I'm trying to gauge these things. I want people to be able to take on work that is challenging and engaging and interesting. It has to be aligned with what the business is doing, of course, but when we're trying to figure these things out, I don't want to overload someone with stuff and they're like, Nick, like I feel like I'm like underwater trying to keep up with this because it's just over my head, or there's too much. So I want it to be challenging but not overwhelming. And when people are like interested in learning and growing and being challenged, like they're a little bit more proactive and kind of presenting that to me, which makes it easier for me to say, look, okay, this person, if I'm not observing that they're overwhelmed, they're also telling me, hey, I am not. I'm actually eager. So that makes that a little bit easier. Um, I didn't want to forget about this part on the topic of asking questions. Instead, like not just the be curious part, because I think that's important. I think a really good trait is to be asking questions to get unblocked. I've made many videos about this. I will try not to just repeat everything, because if you're like, hey, like what are you talking about, just look for other videos I have on my channel about like about new developers and or interns and asking questions and stuff. You'll find videos on this. Watch them in two times speed. If you don't like that I ramble too much, I'm not going to be offended. But the idea that and I see this more with like more remote work, but people seem to be very hesitant to ask questions. Maybe it's they don't want to seem stupid, maybe they don't want to bother other people, maybe all the above, maybe whatever else, but like some of the best interns or new hires that I've ever had are the ones that are like, cool, like I am stuck, I've tried a few things out, I'm blocked, right? Like I'm going to ask for help. Like right away, instead of, hey, like we're doing our weekly check-in and someone's like, yeah, I've been stuck on this for a week, and I'm like, oh, like what, like you, so I know you've been talking with your intern buddy, you didn't even bring that up with them, you waited a full week to come talk to me, and like you felt comfortable talking to me about it, thank you, but like why did you wait a week? Like this is the kind of thing where I've noticed that when people, and when they answer, they're like, oh, I was didn't want to bother anyone, or I just didn't know what to do. um I just like need to keep reminding people, please, like if you're stuck, we want to get you unblocked. I do think that you need to do a little bit of homework. So if you're, first of all, if you're not sure, you need clarity, get that clarity right away. There's not really a whole lot if you just spend extra time on that. You're not going to get a whole lot out of it if you're not even clear about what's being asked of you. So if you're not sure and you need clarity, get that right away. Now, if you have other problems, you know what you're supposed to be doing, but you're like, how do I do it? Or like, what's the best path? Or spend some time on that. You can time box it, but spend some time. That way, when you ask for help, you always want to be in a position where if you're not asking for clarity, you can say, or you can be ready to answer, what have I tried? Or what have you tried so far? Right? Try something first, then go ask your questions. People will really appreciate it. And I think back to what I said earlier about getting stuck on stuff, you will learn. You will get better at problem solving because you're practicing doing things on your own. And then, of course, go get help. People want to help you. They want to get you unblocked. They want to get you to being a performant member of the team, because that means you're going to help everyone when you're also performing. So keep that in mind. But my piece of advice there is, please don't hesitate to ask for help. I think so many people are afraid of bothering other people. There's strategies around that. You can, balance between who you're asking for help. You can literally ask people, hey, look, like I know I've been asking you a lot of questions. Like I don't want to be bothering you. Can I do this in a more effective way? Do you want me to group up my questions? Do you want me to, maybe they don't want you to call them. They're like, yeah, like you can ask them, right? Like email them to me, send them in chat, or maybe they're saying like, hey, you send me a lot of messages and I want to be able to help you. Maybe schedule a call with me at the end of the day. group up 5 of your questions, send them at the end of the day. I'll carve out 30 minutes. I'll get you unblocked. Like, you can ask people about this if you're concerned. And it sounds funny, right? But people don't do this. But like, why wouldn't you? Literally, if someone messaged me and they said, "Hey, Nick, I feel like I ask you a lot of questions and I don't want to bother you. Is there some other way that I could be doing this so that I could, make that more effective for you or a better experience for you?" I would love to be able to answer that question and give someone feedback. Most of the time, it's probably you're not like it's totally fine. Do whatever you're doing. But if I had someone that was honestly asking me a ton of questions and it was taking a lot of time, I would just tell them what would work most effectively for me. That's going to help me and it's going to help them. So people don't seem to have conversations as much as they should. But we're software engineers, right? We don't talk to people. So more advice for new coders. Don't forget about your soft skills. Everyone is very, very, very focused on your technical skills, what language you know, your tech stack, all these things, your lead code stuff. But the reality is, like, a lot of people forget about soft skills. And you might find in the beginning as a junior engineer, you're like, whatever, they're just setting me up with these smaller tasks anyway, it's fine. You will find in your career, I promise you, that your soft skills are going to be very important. So try not to forget about them as you're trying to grow. So if you're the kind of person who is, pardon me, like shying away from things, like I don't like participating in any of the design conversations, or we do like a team retrospective, I never say anything. Stand up, I never try to like say anything. Like, I'm always trying to avoid interactions. I just want to remind you that like those things are not going away. They may change, they may look different, but you will be interacting with people. So if your strategy is let me avoid all interactions, I'm just here to remind you it's probably going to backfire at some point, but you can find effective ways to work with others. You can learn about these different things and you can practice, right? So try not to avoid that. Um, I would say also some advice for beginners or like interns. Um, be clear about like time horizons. So let me try to explain this a little bit more. I'm the kind of manager that I don't like to micromanage at all because I've seen it many times happen. I have been micromanaged before and I have wanted nothing else but to stop working entirely because I'm like, I don't have any autonomy anymore. Like, what am I even doing? If you're going to micromanage me to this extent, you might as well do the work. Like, that's how it feels. So I never want to micromanage people. And it's almost like a problem where I get nervous that people may feel a certain way if I try to manage in different directions. So I almost always over index the other way so that people don't feel that way. And what I have found, I've talked about this in other videos too, is that sometimes junior developers actually do want to be micromanaged a little bit. And it sounds funny because some people are probably hearing this and saying, we don't, absolutely not. But what I mean by that is being more explicit about timelines, having them more frequent, and having more check in points specifically. So a lot of times there's confusion around like, am I on track? Am I doing work at the right pace? So you can either be guessing about it, or as I've had conversations with people when they're concerned about it, I just say, like, how would you feel about, if we set up some mini milestones and we set them and they're not carved in stone. So, like, don't panic if you're a day late or something. But these will be your opportunities to say, hey, look, I know, Nick, we talked about this being done for Thursday, but it's Wednesday, halfway through the day already. And like, I'm still partway through this and I don't think it's going to make it. Great. And when I say great, I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, great. Thank you for letting me know, because now we can see if we need to pivot. It's like raising awareness about this kind of stuff is so important. And people just people shy away from it, I think, because they're worried that if they're not exactly on track, like then they're behind and they're a terrible employee. Software estimates are basically always wrong. So they're nice for being, in my opinion, nice for being able to communicate an expectation and then use it as a marker for, hey, look, like we said this, we're not doing this, we should talk. Like it's just a really good conversation starter. So what I would recommend is raise awareness of this kind of thing. You may find that you don't have clarity about timelines. Talk about it. Ask questions about it. See if you can work with your manager, the product owner, to have more concrete milestones. When should I have this investigation? And when should I have this code up for review? How long should it sit in review? How long should I be waiting to like flight my changes out to be tested? Like whatever the process happens to be where you're working, try to get some clarity around that so that you're not like, oh man, like it's been a week and like my code's not even in review yet. Am I on track? I don't know. Like I can't answer that for you, but it might be that your manager put you on something and they're like, I just want you to spend a little bit of extra time learning the code base and the domain here. So yeah, like it would have been sweet if you could have finished the work in a week, but like no sweat. I actually want you to go spend more time learning stuff. If it takes you another extra week because you are talking to people on the team, learning about stuff, maybe that's what they want. We won't know unless you go have a conversation with them. So talk, raise awareness about timelines and stuff to have that clarified for you. I think that can make a big difference. And then that way you're not sitting there, especially if you're remote, going like, shit, am I doing the right work? Like, am I performing well? A lot of people seem to be concerned about this. So talking helps. Um, I think for now, that's probably it to get started. I have plenty of other advice, like beyond just getting started, but maybe the final thing I'll say is like get to know the people on the team at a minimum, right? Learn who the subject matter experts are, learn about their experiences on the team, because you'll find that like having a network that you can rely on is very helpful. So you're not going to be an expert in everything. It's kind of the reality of it. That's fine. But when you need help and you need to go solve problems, knowing who you can go talk to is going to be a big time saver. So I just recommend that you go do that. And plus, the more time you spend getting to know your colleagues, your peers, your teammates, likely the better work interactions you're going to have with them because you understand kind of like how they operate. And that's back to soft skills. So I hope that's helpful. That's where I would start. If you thought that this was helpful, you can share it. I think that would be super helpful for me. I know that I've been trying to go to Reddit to answer questions and stuff, but I don't want to post links to my stuff because I don't want people to ban me from subreddits because it's already happened. So if you thought it was helpful, share it on Reddit, share it on LinkedIn, share it on Twitter. Helps me a lot. I do appreciate that. And of course, if you have questions you want answered, comments, or look for Dev Leader on social media, send me a message. I will try my best to help you out. Thanks. I'll see you next time.